Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going into an intro into the Ruby programming language. So this is one of my favorite languages. I love writing in it. I love doing side projects in it. And it's a lot of fun to program in. It lets you get things done quickly. And I'd like to share with you some of the cool stuff and kind of get your feet wet into what it can do. And then we'll do further videos on some cool projects and other things. Ruby is a dynamic language, which means that you don't have to specify the data type of each variable. You let the language figure that out for you, which in some cases is really awesome. In other cases, it's not so great, but it lets you type a lot less words and you can be very expressive. So Ruby is known for its expressiveness and being able to write what are called domain-specific languages. So the nice thing is you can have your Ruby code mirror whatever your domain is. So like if you're in medical, then you can create a lot of nice language around prescriptions or insurance or other things that are tailored to your domain, so you can get a lot done quickly. Ruby got popular around 2005. And that's whenever the Ruby on Rails framework came out, which was created by DHH or David Heinemeier Hansson. The premise of Ruby on Rails was to do what's called convention over configuration. And so doing things in a conventional way instead of getting overburdened by a lot of configuration, which was done in things like XML or other, very heavy configuration type languages. You didn't have to do that with Rails, so you could get up and running. That was the power of it, to get going quickly in these different startups. Twitter is a really good example of a Ruby on Rails project that, today they have massive scale and no longer use it. But back in the day, to get off the ground and running and go to market quickly, they used Ruby and Ruby on Rails to get there. Some of the other languages that are more popular today, now that Ruby has kind of fallen a little bit in popularity, are Go, Rust, Node.js, Python, and Kotlin. And some of those languages I'm a little bit familiar with, so we can do some tutorials on them. But again, I really love programming on Ruby and would love to show you all some of the tips and tricks that I've learned in my career. We'll go over 3 different ways to run Ruby. So we'll dive into running it on the command line, running it via a file, which we'll do a lot of our work in. And then we'll use what's called the REPL: read, evaluate, print, and loop. So what that means is it's going to read the instructions you put in, evaluate them, and then print whatever the output is, and then do it all back again. So let's dive into it. So I already have a terminal open. I like to use iTerm, but you can open up, the terminal. I'm using a Mac today. You can open up terminal. Again, I use iTerm, which has a few nice features to do a little bit more customization. So open up your terminal and let's see if you have Ruby installed. So one way to check this is you type Ruby and -v, and it'll show you what version we're running. This one, we're running Ruby 3.0.2. If you're running on a Windows machine, I'll post a link in the description on how you can get that set up. At this point, we know that Ruby is running, and don't worry too much about the version. I will show y'all in a different video of how to manage different versions of Ruby. But for now, whatever comes on your Mac or in your Linux machine, on your Windows device, then just go ahead and use that and you'll be just fine. So I'm gonna clear this and we'll start with running Ruby just with one command. So we'll type Ruby and E to execute. And what we're going to do is print out, do a hello world example, which is usually the first thing that anybody does in a programming language. All right, so now we will type puts, which is putting to the console, and we'll just type hello world. And we'll close that. And then actually, we need to surround this with different quotes. So I have the single quotes on the outside and then double quotes around hello world. And if we hit enter, then that will print out hello world. So we did it. Another cool thing to do is you can put your name in here. So you could do hello Andrew, and it will output just like that. All right, so now that's one way to execute Ruby. Let's also do a file. So we'll do touch and example.rb, and then we'll open up whatever editor you want. If you like Vim or VI or VS Code or RubyMine, any of those work. The easiest one, and like the one that I've found takes up the least amount of resources, is Visual Studio Code. I'll put a link to that in the description on where you can go to download that. Works on both Windows and Mac, so use that. This is the little symbol for it, Visual Studio Code. So we'll open that, and we can see our file here. Note that we had to end the file with a .rb for Ruby. So we'll open this file up. Now there's nothing in it. So we can do exactly what we did before and do puts hello Andrew. And we note that we don't need to surround this with the quotes. So we'll save this file, go back to our terminal, and we can type Ruby and example.rb, hit that, and we see it running. So we can make some changes, and we'll copy this line, and then we'll run it again, and we see that those changes are output. If you want to have a other way of running it, which is the REPL or REPL, then we can type IRB, hit enter, and it'll show us a little prompt here. So if we do puts hello world, then hit that, and it does the same thing. And you can see that we have this prompt that we can enter in as much stuff as we want. So if we wanted to save something into a variable, like Bob his name is going to be Bob S. So we could do puts Bob, and it would output that name for us. We could also do something like puts, and this is called interpolation. And so you can embed a variable into a string here. So we could say hello and Bob. Now we have to surround this with a hashtag and some curlies. And then from there, we'll add an exclamation mark at the very end. And then we can do this. It says hello Bob S. And that is outputting using the REPL. So you can continually do this forever. And then to get out of this, you can do a exit, and that'll take us back to this prompt here. Now we can go over a quick example here, and we'll go back to our file and then delete this information, and then we'll start with an object-oriented programming example, because Ruby is first and foremost an object-oriented language, which means everything is an object and it all inherits from the object class. And so this is meant to mirror everyday life and things that are nouns, which is, for example, animals. So we can do a little animal example. So let's put this back and let's actually create a new file. And to do that, we can do a right-click, new file, and we'll do animals.rb. And in here, we can define a class. We'll say animal, and it will have a method, and it won't do anything. So a class is a template that you can use to make objects. And so think of this as a blueprint, which we can then use to build things. So another example would be, for building a house, you have the blueprint for a house, which would be your class. And then you have the actual houses that were built using that template. and those are separate entities. So again, the template is what is used to describe what is going to happen, and then the actual thing is going to be your house, which is the object. All right, so we have an animal class here, and so let's actually put hello, and so we can test this and say animal. Actually, we won't have it put anything. We'll just have it give us a string. One thing to note here is for functions, you don't have to do a return, which is different from other languages. So a lot of times in Java or JavaScript, sometimes you have to add an explicit return. You don't have to do this in Ruby. And so it's more idiomatic to leave that out and just say whatever the end result is for that function definition. So we have our animal and create a new one, which is going to create a new object for us. And then we can call the say method. Now this, we want to be able to see what's happening on the screen. And so we want to do a puts of this end result. So think of it like, this is the thing that's happening, and this is just outputting that. So here we'll go back to our screen and we'll do our Ruby and animals.rb, hit that, and we see hello, success. All right, now let's make this a little bit more interesting. And we'll have another class called dog. And this dog is gonna also implement the say method, and it's gonna say woof. Now, let's fix our spacing here. Dog can inherit from the animal class. And if we do that, then it'll get all the behavior. So let's actually comment this out. And so these hashtags in front of the specific statements will skip over it. So these will not be executed. So if we do animal say here, and instead we do dog, so we actually don't have this functionality, right? It's almost like it doesn't exist. If we do this again, we'll see it says hello twice. But if we bring back this woof, then we see it actually says woof, like a dog should. And so this is what's called inheritance. And a lot of times this is used in programming, especially for object-oriented languages, where you want to inherit some behavior. This one is overriding all of the behavior that it got from animal, but if you wanted to have some other stuff inside of the animal class, something else you could have in this class would be like what kind of a type it is. So you could say that this is all going to be mammals. Hopefully I'm spelling mammals correctly. Now that we have our type, we actually don't need to put this inside of our other guy. So we can do both of these, and we will we'll just recreate the object. You can actually pull this out into a variable, but for right now, let's do type, and we should see that both of these types are the same. So let's rerun our code here, and they're both mammals. So that is what we expected to have happen. And if we had another animal that would inherit from animal, then what would the fox say? From here, there's actually a funny song about this, which is my punchline, but We will be what the fox says today. And if we do, again, a couple of these, and we do fox and fox. So what does the fox say? Should say this funky looking word here, and it's a mammal. So that's how inheritance works in object-oriented languages like Ruby. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and like and subscribe if you want to see more of this, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.